But then my son Noah walked up to me, and he said something that broke my heart into a million pieces. He said, "I just don't want you to embarrass him again, Mom." You know what hurts the most? It's not when strangers are mean to you. It's when your own family treats you like you don't matter. Let me tell you about something that happened to me that changed everything. I was standing outside a big fancy building. There were parents everywhere, holding flowers and cameras. Music was playing inside. Everyone looked happy and excited. It was my grandson Liam's graduation day from college. I should be happy too, right? But then my son Noah walked up to me, and he said something that broke my heart into a million pieces. He said, "I just don't want you to embarrass him again, Mom." Can you believe that? His own mother, standing there in a new navy blue dress that I bought just for this special day. I had traveled for 11 whole hours on a train to get there. That's like traveling from morning until nighttime. I even stayed in a hotel room that smelled awful, like someone had cleaned it with too much bleach. But I did it all because I love my grandson. Noah wasn't even looking at me when he said those mean words. He was just fixing his tie and moving his feet around like he was embarrassed to be seen with me. You know how kids act when they don't want to be seen with their parents at school? That's exactly how my own son was acting with me. Then Noah said, "You know how these events are. Like I was the kind of grandma who causes trouble everywhere she goes. Like I was someone who makes scenes and ruins parties." He said, "Liam wants this to be his day with his friends. Let's not make it about you." Those words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Here's the thing. I raised Noah when he was little. I was the one who sat with him in the hospital when he was sick. I was the one who wrote all the checks to pay for his school, his clothes, everything he needed. And now he's telling me I'm an embarrassment? I didn't fight back. I didn't argue. I didn't say all the things I wanted to say. I just nodded. You know that sad kind of nod people do when they're too tired to fight anymore. That's what I did. Then I turned around and walked back to my rental car. My high heels went click, click, click on the pavement as I walked away from the building where my grandson was graduating. I didn't even know if Liam had seen me there. He was probably backstage getting ready with all his friends, taking pictures and smiling. I wondered if he even knew I had come to see him graduate, or if he had told his dad not to invite me in the first place. When I got back to my car, I just sat there for a long time. I wasn't crying, but I wasn't okay either. I was just breathing and trying to understand what had just happened. In my purse was an envelope with a check inside. Not just any check. This was for $90,000. That's more money than most people see in their whole life. For 13 years, I had been saving money for Liam's college. Every month, I put money away in a special account just for him. Nobody asked me to do it. I did it because that's what grandmothers do. We think about the future. We save our money so our grandchildren can have better lives than we did. I went back to my hotel room and it was just as bad as before. It still smelled like that awful bleach smell. I hung up my new dress very carefully and sat on the bed. I turned on the TV, but I wasn't really watching it. I was just staring at the black screen, thinking about everything. Then something funny happened. At 8:32 at night, someone knocked on my door. It was a young man in a uniform from the hotel. He was holding a small box that said, "Congratulations" on it in sparkly letters. Inside were cupcakes. "Room service," he said, but I hadn't ordered any cupcakes. "Sorry," I told him, "I think you have the wrong room." He looked confused and checked the box. "You're not room 207? "I'm 209, I said. "Oh, my bad," he said. Then he looked at me and said, "You want them anyway? They'll just throw them out if nobody takes them." I took the box of cupcakes, not because I was hungry for sweets, but because I needed to hold something. Sometimes when you're really sad, you just need to hold something in your hands. That night, I lay in my bed staring up at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Liam when he was just a tiny baby. I used to rock him in a blanket that I made myself with my own hands. He used to cry a lot at night. That's called colic. Babies with colic cry, and nothing seems to help them feel better. Noah's content, Liam's dad, never wanted to help with the nighttime crying. He always said he had important meetings in the morning and needed his sleep. So it was always me who stayed up all night, rocking Liam and trying to make him feel better. When Liam was little and had trouble talking, I was the one who drove him to speech therapy every week. When he needed special braces for his teeth, I was the one who paid for them. When the teachers at school wanted to talk to his parents, I was the one who showed up because Noah was always too busy with work. I started wondering when I became invisible to my family. 17 years of quietly helping my son whenever he needed money. He's been ashamed of me for a long time, I said. The way I talk, where I live, the fact that I used to own a bakery instead of having some fancy job. Everything about me reminds him of where he came from, and he doesn't like that. Grandma, Barbara started to say. I used to think it would get better, I continued. I thought it was just because of the people he worked with or lived near, rich people who made him feel bad about having a mother who worked with her hands. But you know what I realized? It wasn't them making him act this way. It was him. It was always him. Barbara reached over and put her hand on top of mine. It's not your fault he turned out that way. I didn't answer her. I just looked down at all those papers spread across my table. Every single piece of paper was proof of a time I said yes when I should have stopped to think about it. Every dollar was a vote of confidence that no one never asked for and never thanked me for. I want to change the bank account, I said. I want to put your name on it instead. Barbara blinked in surprise. What? You'll need someone to sign with you until you're 25 years old, but I'll get the paperwork started. That money was meant to help someone build a future. I still believe in futures, just not the one I thought I was building. Barbara didn't say anything for a long time. She just nodded once and squeezed my hand tighter. Later that day, after Barbara went home, I sat alone in my living room. The sun was coming through my curtains, making long stripes of warm light across the floor. I thought about the graduation ceremony. I imagined Liam in his graduation gown with that little hat on his head, walking across the stage. I wondered how he would explain to people why his grandmother wasn't there. Maybe he'd say I was too old to travel or too sick, or maybe he wouldn't mention me at all. That's what people do when they want to erase someone from their life. They start by leaving them out of the stories they tell. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not forgotten either. I'm just done pretending that things are different than they really are. The morning after Barbara left, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow pad of paper and a pen. The first pen I tried had run out of ink. It had dried up 2 years ago when I was writing a grocery list, so I got a different pen from the junk drawer, one that had some weight to it. It felt right for what I needed to do. At the top of the page, I wrote in slow, careful letters, Silvercrest Horizon Holdings, R.E., termination and reassignment of college fund account 6529-RH. Then I stopped writing. It's strange how your hand can shake more when you're writing something true and important than when you're lifting something heavy. I'd written thousands of things in my life. Checks, orders for my bakery, sympathy cards when people died. But this was different. This was me saying that something was over. This was me saying I was done pretending that things are different than they really are. I picked up my pen again and wrote, starting immediately, I am stopping all permissions for money to be given to Mr. Liam Douglas for college expenses from trust account. People always tell you that family will come around eventually, that they'll realize they were wrong and apologize. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just keep walking away from you, and sometimes you have to stop leaving the porch light on for them. The next morning, I woke up early and poured myself a cup of coffee from yesterday's pot. I didn't bother heating it up. I sat at the table, sipping slowly, staring at the stack of folders I had pulled from my filing cabinet. This one was labeled Noah, 2004 to present. It started with a check for $5,000 marked business loan, startup idea. I remember writing that check. Noah had been so confident, waving around his business plan like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Mom, it's a real opportunity," he had said, "not one of those scam things you read about." 6 months later, his business was closed. I never asked him what happened to the money. Then there was the check for the down payment on his first house, $28,000. He and his wife Sophia were newlyweds then, and he said it would mean everything to have a place that was really theirs. "We'll pay you back within 2 years," Sophia had said, holding my hands like I was her own mother. They never paid back a single cent. Next was summer camp for Liam when he was 9 years old, $3,200. "We're stretched thin right now," Noah had said. "You know how expensive these things are." I did know, but I also knew how it felt to be a kid who got left out of things because there wasn't enough money. So I wrote the check. There were records for Liam's private high school tuition, $15,000 a year for 4 years. I ended up paying for 2.5 years after Noah lost his bonus at work. "Maybe once you sell the bakery, you'll be free of all this financial stress," he had said. Funny how I was always the one freeing other people from their money problems. There were medical bills I had paid, car repairs, even a surprise vacation to Hawaii that Noah called a family recharge. He sent me a postcard from that trip. Just a postcard. It said, "Wish you were here." I kept it, taped inside the folder, because some part of me still wanted proof that they remembered me at all. I flipped through more papers and found the Christmas cards. Handwritten, always late, always signed, "Love, Noah and Sophia and Liam." Never a mention of the gifts I'd sent. Never a phone call to say thank you. I've learned that gratitude is loud in children, but silent in adults. Or maybe it just stops being spoken when people know you'll give without needing to hear thank you. I picked up the last piece of paper, a printout from Venmo from 2 months ago. Noah had requested $300 for school supplies. The note was short. "If you can, things are tight." I sent the money immediately. No reply from him, not even a thumbs-up emoji. I laid all the papers out across my table like evidence in a crime scene. Paper witnesses to my quiet generosity over the years. I wasn't trying to count up all the money, though it was a number most people wouldn't ignore. I was trying to see it all clearly, trying to understand how it had gotten to this point. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that I had given all of it while making myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the tiny corners of their lives where I was still allowed to exist. I remembered something Barbara had said once, years ago when she was still a teenager and full of questions about how the world worked. "Why do you always say yes to everything, Grandma?" I answered, "Because when people don't want you for who you are," what they didn't know was that I opened the bakery the very next day after the funeral. I couldn't afford to close. I mixed dough with tears in my eyes and served coffee with a smile I didn't feel. People were kind for about a week. Then they stopped asking how I was doing. Then they just ordered their usual pastries and coffee. But the work kept me moving, kept me breathing. Over the next 10 years, I turned the place into something special. I hired 2 women from the homeless shelter, installed new ovens, and got us listed as one of the 10 small businesses to watch in the local paper. I even won a blue ribbon for my pecan pie at the county fair. Not because it was perfect, but because I was the only baker still making everything from scratch. I didn't take vacations, I didn't buy new clothes very often, but I saved money slowly and quietly. And when I finally sold the bakery years later, I had made enough to live simply and help my family when they needed it. What I didn't expect was that the more I helped, the less they saw me as a real person. Noah once told someone at a party that I used to bake a little before retirement. Used to, like it had been a hobby instead of the business that kept our family afloat. I remember Barbara catching my eye from across the room when he said that. She didn't say anything, but she didn't laugh either. Now, years later, I stood in my kitchen thinking, if I could rebuild a business from the ashes of grief, I could rebuild a life from the ashes of disappointment. And maybe, just maybe, I could use what I still had, the quiet strength, the leftover love, even the money, to help someone who really needed it, someone who hadn't already decided I was past my usefulness. I pulled out a blank notepad and wrote 3 words at the top. Scholarship. First generation. I didn't know who they would be yet, but I knew they existed somewhere. Young men and women who reminded me of the girl I once was. Scrappy, scared, but still believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That's who the scholarship fund would be for. Not out of spite, not as revenge, but as hope. Hope that someone else's story would turn out better than mine. The phone call came just after dinner. Not the kind of dinner with cloth napkins or candles, just soup from a can and a biscuit I had defrosted from the freezer. I was rinsing my bowl in the sink when the phone rang, and for some reason, I dried my hands very slowly before answering. It was Liam. Grandma? His voice was softer than I remembered, or maybe it just sounded different because there was distance in it now. Yes, sweetheart, I said. The word came out gentler than I meant it to. I just wanted to check in with you. Barbara said you were in town for my graduation. I closed my eyes for a moment, so he knew I had been there. He didn't see me at the ceremony, he continued. I turned around at the door. I said simply. There was a pause. I could almost hear him putting the pieces together in his mind. Did something happen with Dad? I sat down slowly, cradling the phone between my shoulder and my cheek. He asked me not to come inside. Silence. Then just one word. Oh. That single syllable was heavy with something he probably didn't have words for yet. Shame, maybe, confusion. I didn't know, he said after a moment. I assumed you didn't want to make such a long trip. I traveled 11 hours by train to be there, I said quietly. He let out a long breath that I could hear through the phone. I'm sorry, Grandma. Don't be sorry, I said, looking out my window at the porch light flickering against the dark evening. Did you have a good day? It was fine, he said too quickly. A little overwhelming, actually. Dad rented out this big hall, hired photographers, gave speeches. He got really emotional during his toast. I think he'd been planning the whole thing for months. I could hear him trying to steer our conversation away from the painful part, trying to patch up the hole. I let him do it. I didn't want to make him feel guilty. That wasn't the point of his call. Barbara said you mailed something back, he said, his voice quieter now. I did. What was it? I hesitated, then decided to tell him the truth.
Your college fund. Another pause. Oh, he said again, but this O was heavier than the first one. This one was heavier, sadder. I had been setting money aside for you since you were 5 years old, every single month, even when the bakery was struggling, even when I was tired and worried about my own bills. I didn't know, he said softly. I know.
At 11 o'clock in the morning, I got into my car and drove to the bank. There were some things I didn't want to do through a computer screen. Some moments deserved to be witnessed by real people in real rooms. The bank teller recognized me. "Mrs. Douglas, haven't seen you here in a while. I'd like to speak with James, please, privately." She buzzed him, and I was led into a quiet glass office with a potted plant in the corner and soft jazz music playing from hidden speakers. James smiled in that polite, professional way that bankers do. "Everything went through perfectly," he said. "We'll finalize the reassignment as soon as you file Barbara's consent form and identification." "I also want to create something completely new," I said. "A scholarship fund." He raised his eyebrows but didn't look surprised. He just opened a few new tabs on his computer. "Tell me more about what you have in mind." "Private," I said. "Anonymous. I want complete privacy, not connected to the family name at all." "Understood." "It's for first-generation college students," I continued. "I want to give preference to working-class kids, someone who has earned every inch of their future the hard way." "How much would you like to put into this fund to start?" "Let's begin with $100,000, with room for it to grow over time." He nodded slowly, typing notes into his computer. "We can set that up as a managed charitable trust. You'll stay in complete control of who gets selected." "Good," I said. "I want it that way." He printed out some preliminary paperwork and slid it across his desk to me. "You're sure about keeping it anonymous?" I said. "I want to be known only to the person who receives the scholarship, and only if I choose to write to them personally." James nodded. "That can be arranged." After I signed all the first papers, I left with copies of everything and a strange feeling of lightness in my chest. Not happiness exactly, that would be too strong a word, but something close to it, like I had finally unclenched a fist I'd been holding tight for way too many years. When I got home, I opened a new document on my computer and created a file called Scholarship Fund Guidelines and Intentions. I typed slowly and carefully. "This fund is meant for a young person who has been overlooked, underestimated, or simply not supported by the people who should have supported them. Someone who reminds me that being worthy isn't something you inherit from your family, it's something you earn by working hard and being kind. This is not a reward for being perfect. It's an act of believing in someone, quiet, unconditional belief in their future." I saved the document, then I sat at my kitchen table and poured myself a glass of water. No celebration, no special toast, just a long look out the window where the light was changing colors on the trees. For most of my life, I had been a background character in other people's stories. I was supportive, I was present, but I was mostly silent. Now, finally, I had a story that belonged completely to me. Friday morning came bright and cold, with the kind of wind that makes you second-guess everything: your coat, your shoes, your big decisions. I wore my gray wool jacket, the one I'd had for years. It still fit perfectly, still held its shape just like I did. The lawyer's office was downtown, not in some tall, fancy building, but in a quiet, narrow building squeezed between a bookstore and a dentist office. It was the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were specifically looking for it. Henry welcomed me with that same calm smile he'd had since Benjamin and I first used his services to buy our house, way back in 1979. He was a little more bent over now, his beard a bit whiter, but his eyes were still sharp and smart. "Isabella," he said, standing up from his desk. "You look well."
I look like someone who has finally had enough, I said, sitting down across from him. He chuckled softly. That's something to be proud of, actually. We didn't waste any time with small talk. I handed him the envelope with all the documents I had prepared, the trust reassignment papers, my letter about the charitable scholarship, the list of monthly payments I wanted stopped. He read through everything silently, nodding here and there. Very clean, he said finally. You've done most of the hard work already. I've had plenty of time to think, I said, and to grieve what I thought my family was supposed to be. He didn't try to give me a—
Barbara tilted her head. He won't wonder for long. You know how he is. I know, I said. That's why I'm getting prepared. She raised an eyebrow. Prepared for what? The storm? The begging? The bargaining? Barbara smiled a little. Do you really think he'll beg? No, I said, but he'll perform like he's begging. There's a big difference. She looked down at her teacup. You know, when I was 12 years old, I told Mom I wanted to come live with you permanently. I turned to look at her, surprised. You never told me that. She said no. Said it would confuse things. Said you were too soft. My throat felt tight. Too soft? Too willing to forgive people who hurt you. She said you were too available whenever people needed something. I let out a long breath. That sounds about right. I didn't understand it then, Barbara continued. But now I think she was scared that I'd grow up with your voice in my head instead of hers. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. I'm not doing any of this to punish anyone, I said quietly. I'm doing it because I can't carry all this weight anymore, not by myself. I know, she said. I can see that. We sat like that for a long time after that. No words, just two women from two different generations, both understanding exactly how much silence can hold and say. When Barbara finally got up to leave, she hugged me. Not a quick obligatory hug, but a real embrace that lasted. At the door, she turned and said, If Dad calls you, are you going to answer? I thought for a moment. Maybe, but not right away, and not to explain myself or make excuses. She nodded. Good. Then she left, and I stood at the window long after her car disappeared, watching the wind move through the trees like it had something important to say. The first voicemail came at 2:14 in the afternoon on Sunday. I was folding laundry in my bedroom. The phone buzzed twice on the counter, then went silent. No name showed up on the screen, but I didn't need one. Noah has always used silence like a tool, first waiting for people to beg him to talk, then pretending to be the bigger person when the begging never came. I let it go to voicemail. Then the next call came, and the next one after that. By the time I finished folding my clothes, there were 5 missed calls and 2 voicemails waiting. I sat down on the edge of my bed and pressed play. Mom, it's Noah. I've been trying to reach you. Liam said you two talked. I don't know what he told you, but I think we should clear the air. I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Call me back. I deleted it. The second voicemail started differently. Seriously, Mom, this is getting out of hand. I don't know what Barbara's been telling you or what Liam said, but you're making things way more dramatic than they need to be. We're family. You're always welcome at family events. I deleted that one too. Monday morning, I woke up to 6 more missed calls. One of the voicemails was longer and filled with the kind of desperation that didn't suit him at all. Look, I made a mistake, okay? I shouldn't have said what I said outside the graduation ceremony, but it was a really tense moment, and I was just trying to make sure Liam had the perfect day he wanted, That's all it was. Don't throw away our whole relationship over one comment. There it was. The shift from being vaguely polite to feeling entitled to my forgiveness. Don't throw everything away like I was the one who had broken something in the first place. He called again that evening. Mom, the bank contacted me today. There's been some kind of stop put on the car leasing account. They said the guarantor withdrew authorization. That's you, right? I need to talk to you about this. Please call me back. Of course it was me. I didn't call back. The next voicemail was shorter and angrier. Mom, this is affecting my credit score. I've got important things tied to that lease. Even Liam's student loan is connected to it. You didn't even warn us this was coming. Then the silence grew longer. 2 whole days passed with no new messages. I assumed he was taking time to regroup and plan his next move. Then, Thursday night, a text message came in. I just don't understand how you could do this.
One essay in particular had stayed with me. It was from a girl in Mississippi who worked nights at a diner, wrote poetry on the backs of order receipts, and wanted to study education so she could become a teacher. She didn't beg in her essay. She didn't try to impress anyone with big words. She just told the truth. My mom says I'm too soft to make it in college, she wrote. But I think softness is actually a kind of strength. It means I haven't turned hard and mean, even when I could have. That one line sat inside me like a stone dropped into still water, making ripples that spread and spread. I clicked approve on her application. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a plain note card. Not fancy stationery, just a simple white square that I'd used for shopping lists before. I wrote carefully, "Dear recipient, you don't know me, but I see you. Keep going with your dreams, not because someone's watching and judging, but because you can. Because you deserve to." Then I signed it. From someone who believes in softness being strength, too. It was a Wednesday when I decided to go back to visit my old bakery one last time, not to work there. The new owner had taken over 5 years ago and turned it into something much fancier, with chalkboard menus and glass display cases. They'd kept the name, Douglas's Hearth, but somehow none of the warmth felt the same. Still, it was the place where I'd built everything important in my life, including the strength I was standing on right now. I didn't call ahead or make an appointment. I just walked the 10 blocks from my house, wearing the old navy coat that Benjamin once said made me look like a woman who didn't care to be underestimated. The little bell over the door still jingled when I walked in. That sound, at least, hadn't changed. The girl behind the counter was young, high school age maybe. She smiled at me like I was just another customer. "Can I help you with something?" "I used to own this place," I said, stepping further inside. Her eyebrows lifted with interest. "You're Mrs. Douglas." "I am." She smiled even wider. "The owner talks about you all the time. He says you and your husband built it from absolutely nothing, and that people used to come in not just for pies and coffee, but for comfort." That word, comfort, landed heavier than she probably knew. I looked around the space. The tables were different, the paint was lighter, but the bones of the place were still mine. The little window near the back where I used to sit with my account books, the dent in the floor near the counter was still there, though now it was covered by a colorful rug. "Would you like to sit down?" the girl asked kindly. I did sit, and I ordered a slice of apple pie, even though I knew it wouldn't taste exactly the same as mine used to. It didn't. Too much cinnamon, not enough love.
but the gesture of eating it mattered more than the actual taste. I sat there for nearly an hour, just watching people come and go, watching the space hold them and comfort them the way it once held and comforted me. That afternoon, when I got back home, I began sorting through my closets and drawers. I wasn't getting ready to die or move away. I was just getting ready to let go of things I didn't need anymore. I found boxes of old records, receipts, birthday cards that people had sent over the years. I found Liam's drawings from when he was 5 years old, one of a rocket ship, one of a lopsided house with Grandma written in orange crayon across the top. I kept that one. I found the envelope Noah had sent me from his Hawaii vacation with the postcard that said, "Wish you were here." I turned it over, held it up to the light, then dropped it in the trash can. Some things didn't need saving anymore. Late that night, after the dishes were washed and the house was completely quiet, I sat down and wrote one more letter. Not to the bank, not to my lawyer, just to myself. Dear Isabella, you did the best you could with what you had. You gave everything you could give. You stayed when others left. You waited when others gave up. And now you've chosen something different for yourself. Not bitterness, not revenge, just enough. Enough giving without receiving. Enough silence when you deserve to be heard. You are not someone's second choice. You are not someone's backup plan.
That night, I lit a candle in my kitchen. Not because it was some special ceremony, but because the light felt right for the moment. I placed Amira's letter beside my chair where I could see it. I didn't write back to her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sometimes the most beautiful gift is simply in the receiving of something precious. And sometimes the quietest things you do end up echoing the loudest in someone else's life. It was spring again, the kind of spring that comes slowly in this part of the country, reluctant, cautious, still wearing winter's heavy coat. But the daffodils had started pushing their way through the cold ground near my sidewalk, and that was always the first sign. Nature being stubborn as ever, insisting on another beginning no matter what. I went for a walk that morning. Not far, just my old loop around the neighborhood block, past the pharmacy, down toward the little creek, then back along the side of the library where the brick wall was always warm by noon. I wore my good walking shoes, the ones Barbara had once called indestructible, and I carried nothing but my house key in my coat pocket. Near the old hardware store, I saw someone I hadn't seen in decades, Oliver Kirk. We had gone to high school together, sat next to each other in American history class, and spent one awkward summer at the same church camp when we were teenagers. He was standing near the bench outside the store holding a small paper bag. When he saw me, he squinted against the sun, then smiled with recognition. Isabella? I stopped walking. Oliver, I didn't know you still lived here. I don't. Well, I didn't, he said. I moved back about 2 years ago after Grace passed away. Thought I'd stay for maybe 6 months. That turned into 12 months. Now I rent a little apartment above the pharmacy. I'm sorry about Barbara, I said. He nodded slowly. I was too for a long time. But grief gets quieter as time goes on. You learn how to set the dinner table for just one person. I sat beside him on the bench without asking if it was okay. That's the thing about old friendships. They don't need formal invitations. How have you been, Isabella? He asked after a moment. I've been rethinking some important things in my life, I said honestly. He smiled gently. You always did think more than the rest of us back in school. Not more, just longer. We sat there for a while. Two old people in coats that were too warm for the weather, watching cars pass by with their windows cracked open just a little bit to let the spring air in. "I read about your bakery once," Oliver said. "It made some kind of state list, something about having the best pies in the southern counties. That must have felt good." That was a nice surprise. "Do you still bake much?" "Not really. Not for other people anymore." He nodded like he understood. "Sometimes I think about fixing up my old fishing boat. Then I remember how heavy it was to drag around and how quiet the lake feels when you don't have good company." I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time in months and months, I didn't feel small or erased or invisible. I felt completely present in my own life. After a while, Oliver reached into his paper bag and pulled out a small jar, pickled okra. He held it up like he was making an offering. "Still your favorite?" he asked. I laughed out loud, and the sound startled me because I hadn't laughed like that in so long. "You remembered that?" He remembered the people who didn't.
"What's that?" I asked. She handed it to me with a big grin on her face. "Photos from Amira's scholarship ceremony. She sent them to me." I opened the folder slowly, not quite ready for what I was about to see. Inside was a picture of a young woman in a simple dress, standing at a podium, smiling but looking serious, holding an official paper in her hands. Her eyes were bright and alert. Her back was straight and proud. You could tell just by looking at her that she had earned every single minute of that moment. "She mentioned you in her acceptance speech," Barbara said. "She called you her invisible architect." I laughed softly, surprised and pleased. I like that description. "You built something beautiful, Grandma," Barbara said. "You should be proud when you see it." There were more pictures in the folder. Amira shaking hands with the college dean, Amira standing with her mother, both women holding on to each other like the world might tilt and spin away if they let go. Amira surrounded by a small crowd of other students, some holding notebooks, some just watching her face, like they saw something possible and hopeful there. And then, tucked in the very back, there was a photo of the card I had sent her. She had put it in a small frame. "You are not alone, and neither am I." I traced the edge of that photo with my fingertip, very gently. Barbara reached over and took my hand in hers. "I'm proud of you, Grandma." "I'm proud of me, too," I said back, and it wasn't hard at all to mean those words completely. We spent the rest of that afternoon looking through more photos and sharing old stories with each other. Barbara told me about her job, about a promotion she was hoping to get, about a friend she was thinking of moving in with, about the therapy sessions she had started going to. And I listened, not without having to do anything, not as someone whose job it was to fix her problems, not as her backup plan, but just as someone who had earned the right to sit still and be heard. When Barbara finally left that day, she kissed